It's time for another PAC-T test with my 45 ACP H&K 45 Tactical. And this time we're going to be shooting the Remington Golden Saber. Now I've shot the Remington Golden Saber before, so you might be wondering, why am I doing another one? Well, this is different. This is their bonded jacketed hollow point, a very different bullet. Well, it's supposed to be a very different type of bullet. It is also light, 185 grains, compared to our standard 230 grain slug we might be accustomed to with a 45 ACP. PAC-T, full test today, precision, accuracy, consistency, and terminal performance. Terminal performance is shot at 7 yards, 1 bullet into 20% NATO, clear ballistic gelatin, and 5 shots off the bench. We'll start with this. Precision, accuracy, and consistency from 15 yards. Got it? Well, let's go ahead and start shooting. There, it got it. There we go. Let's see how it did. Yeah, that's interesting. It says it's got 5 shots, but several of those were recorded as 0. So we'll go ahead and calculate this at home using just the rounds that actually got valid readings recorded. It looks like this shot quite high on the target also, which is interesting because as I was doing some practice warm-up and actually recording the Mantis X recoil meter, 5 shots with that, just running that recoil meter, offhand shooting, it looked like it shot high also with this particular pistol. I'll have to remember that when we slide over, which is the next thing we're going to do, slide over to the clear ballistic gelatin for 1 shot into that from 7 yards. Well, there it is. This bullet traveled completely through the gel block. That's a 16-inch gel block, and it ended up at about, looks like about 25.5 inches. Notice this bullet did not expand. It also doesn't look, and I'm certain it did not shed jacket from core, so that bonding seems to have worked, but it did not expand as it traveled through that little bit of canvas and the leather. 25.5 inches, we'll call that. And you know, lots of conversations I've had with folks, maybe even yourself online, that's over-penetration. You might be okay out to about 21, 22 inches, but 25.5 inches looks like that over-penetrated. I'm curious to watch the slow motion footage and see how it actually performed. You know, about 5 years ago, I tested this bullet's bigger brother, the original Remington Golden Saber 230 grain bullet, obviously for the 45 ACP. And the results are quite different than what we saw today. However, I will place the caveat that that bullet was tested in a bare gel medium. Still 20% NATO block, but it was a bare gel, not a soft barrier. But what we had there is a final score of 415 points out of a possible 500 points. 13.5 inches of penetration, 99.5% weight retention. The diameter of the retrieved bullet, maximum diameter of that retrieved bullet, is 0.694 of an inch. That's a 154% expansion. And so that bullet, like I said, scored pretty well, 415 points. It made it into our 400 club. That's not what happened today with the 185 grain Remington Golden Saber Bonded bullet in the soft barrier test. And that soft barrier test, remember, is just a couple of layers of cotton duck canvas, 1/16 of an inch tooling leather, and then 2 more layers of that same cotton canvas duck. So looking at the results, we will start by looking at the bullseye target, which is where we essentially get our precision and accuracy, and from that 5-shot group, we also then get the consistency. That's the standard deviation of muzzle velocities. This, again, remember, was shot at 15 yards, and our precision is 1.82-inch 5-shot group. That's the extreme spread. The accuracy score is only 32 points out of a possible 50 points. However, I will note that my HK45 Tactical was not zeroed for the 185 grain Golden Saber, and if I had taken the time or needed to zero it, those results would have turned out quite a bit better. It wouldn't have been everything inside the bullseye or even the 10 ring, but it certainly would have scored a whole lot better than what we're seeing today. So bear that in mind as we are assessing and evaluating this particular round, this particular ammo. We had a muzzle velocity of 1,082 feet per second. 3 of those rounds were captured by the lab radar, and we saw a standard deviation of muzzle velocities of 29.1 feet per second. That's not great, but then again, that's not too terribly unusual for factory ammo. If we look at the shootability for this particular bullet, we then turn to the results from the Mantis X10 recoil meter, and we always compare this to what we call our standard ammo, something that many of you, probably most of you, are familiar with. That is the 115 grain full metal jacket CCI Blazer brass for the 9mm Luger. Recovery time is almost a second, 0.91 second. That's actually faster than the recovery time posted for that CCI Blazer brass. And that could be correct because this is quite a large pistol. The HK45 Tactical is a fairly large pistol. It's a lot smaller than the HK Mark 23, if you've ever seen that thing. That could be fairly accurate. What I also like to look at here for shootability assessment is the muzzle rise, and here we see a lot more muzzle rise, 25.78 degrees muzzle rise compared to about 19 degrees of muzzle rise, about 6%, about 6 degrees more muzzle rise. So that's kind of almost conflicting. We had more muzzle rise, but yet slightly faster recovery time. I'm going to put more emphasis on the muzzle rise for shootability. And I would say that having shot this 9mm, all different sorts of 9mm, and this particular standard so much that this round, Remington Golden Saber Bonded, is not as shootable as is the our standard CCI Blazer brass. Terminal performance, here we're looking at the temporary wound channel, also called the transient cavitation channel, or TCC, and this looks okay. There's a very early energy dump immediately in that gel block. Now that's kind of interesting. Oftentimes we don't see that large ballooning effect until about maybe 3 or 4 inches into the gel block. Then we really see a large balloon, temporary wound channel, being formed, but this one started dumping that right away. But yet remember, this bullet did not expand. In fact, it penetrated all the way through that first gel block and into the second gel block. When I measured it, officially measured it under really strong light and ended up cutting that bullet out, we had a penetration of 25.5 inches. And based on our standards here, when we're doing our PAC-T tests, 22 inches and beyond is considered over-penetration. 25.5 inches, that's over-penetration. You got to start worrying about what this bullet could also be striking if it has that much energy, that much power to go 25.5 inches through and into 2 20% NATO gel blocks. Of course, this bullet retained all of its weight. It is still 185 grains, actually a little bit heavier officially, because the canvas is stuck in the nose or the hollow point of this particular bullet. It absolutely clogged. This bullet then ended up with a final score of, interestingly, 185 points, same as its weight in grains. You know, I was really hoping that this bullet, 185 grains, a little bit light for the 45 ACP, still Golden Saber Bonded type of bullet. I was really kind of having some high hopes for this thing. I've shot some other 180, 185 grain 45 ACP. It just didn't work out. This bullet clogged, and that is not good. Oh, it's still lethal. It's still lethal, but it's not as lethal as it could be. It has diminished lethality because of that characteristic. It clogged. So if you've got some questions, some experiences with this same bullet or similar bullets, I'd like to hear those. Share those with the community. And as always, thank you for watching.